Welcome to The Road to Zero, a future-proof podcast, as we explore the changing nature of our economy as we look for prosperity and opportunity in not only preserving, but also improving our environment. So welcome, Jeff, to The Road to Zero. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Nick. How are you doing today?
Very good, now that we have all our computer bugs sorted out.
Yeah, welcome to 2020 and 2021.
Oh, exactly. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, Zen Energy Solutions.
Sure, I'm happy to. So myself, I have been in the hydrogen fuel cell sector for a little over 20 years. 16 of those years were at Ballard Power Systems, where I worked on the commercial side of the business, government relations primarily. And about 5 years ago, myself and the director of engineering at Ballard, Sabina Russell, we broke off and set up Zen Clean Energy Solutions. Not entirely sure what the work scope was going to look like, but certainly focused on hydrogen and the sector. And yeah, we've managed to keep busy over that time and grown from what was originally 2 people to now a team of 10. So it's yeah, so far so good.
Good. And what had you break off from being with Ballard to stepping off on your own and going in a slightly different direction?
I think for both of us, we wanted to participate sort of in the broader commercialization and deployment activities within the hydrogen sector. We were both working in a very focused way on proton exchange membrane fuel cells, and there's, we enjoyed that certainly, but we're working on a lot broader initiatives now, and so getting involved in hydrogen infrastructure, distribution, fuel cell deployments and operations. It's a little more interesting, and you can feel it as a little more impactful than working sort of within the constraints of an organization. Now, having said that, both of us, when we left Ballard was our first client, so we've kept a very close relationship, and we're happy to see the company doing so well and expanding into the different geographies and growing the business. But yeah, for us, I think we wanted to do some different things, and creating Zen allowed us the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and you've been getting involved in quite a few diverse projects. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your favorite ones, or the ones that you found the most impactful?
Sure. One of the big projects that we're part of, and it was with an organization that we worked with sort of right from the jump, is Sunline Transit. We're project managing an initiative that is deploying multiple fuel cell buses and hydrogen infrastructure, a 900 kilogram per day electrolyzer, storage and dispensing for that in the Coachella Valley. And that's one of our favorite projects. It's operational now. We get to see it being used every day. And then building on that, we were able to work with Sunline and develop a plan for them to entirely transition over to zero-emission buses. The majority of those buses will be fuel cell buses. Some will be battery electric, because there's certain routes that make more sense there for battery electric, but the majority are hydrogen fueled. So that's kind of a, I'd worked with Sunline Transit for years during my time with Ballard, and so helping them really transition entirely over to hydrogen was pretty cool. So that's definitely, that's one on the list. I guess the AZETEC project in Alberta is is another example of kind of the project development work that we do. It started with some conversations with folks in Alberta, and an initial idea, and we applied for some funding from the province and then the federal government. We were able to put partnerships together, and now we've developed a project that's going to demonstrate two 65,000 kilogram gross vehicle weight trucks operating between Edmonton and Calgary over a year and a half. We brought in fueling infrastructure partners and put the whole team together, got all the contracts in place, which is no small feat. And definitely we're into the execution phase. And yeah, the trucks will be delivered in the second half of the year in 2021 and going into operations. And it's kind of cool because it's a unique truck design for the Alberta market and sort of built from the ground up. It's not something that was purchased and designed for a California application or European application that we've kind of had to work within those constraints. It's really sort of a clean sheet design. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Now, when you say what's the big demand? Is it the cold aspect, or what's the aspect that made it more challenging compared to California or European designs?
Yeah, it's a good question. Alberta doesn't have a ton of rail that runs north-south. So if you've ever driven between Edmonton and Calgary, you'll notice these B-train trucks. So these large transport trucks with double trailers that are in operation on the roads. So the power requirement for those trucks is very substantial. And if you look at fuel cell truck deployments in North America, a lot of them are built around drayage operation. So moving within 50 to 100 miles from a seaport with much lower weights. So this was really, yeah, it's the size of the truck, the weight of the truck, and the long range. These trucks have to travel Edmonton to Calgary and back. So that's a range of approximately 700 kilometers. So really, yeah, we really had to do some innovative things in terms of packaging and design to accommodate the duty cycle we needed for the trucks.
Yeah, so really what I hear, it's a very extreme application, pushing what there is to the limit.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. If you can meet the duty cycle for what these trucking companies need in between Edmonton and Calgary, you can do other geographies that they're generally a little easier. And you mentioned the temperature as well. Of course, yeah, that's part of it also.
Yeah. Also, if it works here, it'll work pretty much anywhere else in Canada.
Yeah.
Fully hydrogen vehicles, like they're not hybrids. Is it fully hydrogen?
No, I don't think there are any vehicles that are not hybridized, because just in terms of, there's a couple reasons for that. Regenerative braking. You want to capture the benefits of regenerative braking. That's part of it. But also you want the batteries that are able to sort of pick up that transient load. So those peaks, because those peaks can degrade the life of the fuel cell potentially. So if you look at almost any application nowadays, when we say fuel cell car, we say fuel cell bus or fuel cell truck, we're generally meaning fuel cell hybrid. There's usually some combination of fuel cell and battery on board.
Okay.
And it just
no
makes sense.
Diesel engine, just batteries and hydrogen cells.
Right. That's right.
Okay. So it sounds like the trucks are coming at the end of the year, and then you'll be running this for a year and a half once they start running on the road?
Correct. Yeah. And I should mention that the team, so the operators, there are two operators. One is Trimac and the other is Bison. So they're big big sort of multinational organizations, and they've been really supportive and really engaged right from the start. And then the project team, and the trucks are Freightliner trucks. They use a Dana electric drive. There's a Ballard fuel cell that's powering the vehicles, and there's a group out of Toronto, Allman, that's involved in some of the integration services, so packaging the fuel cell with the hydrogen storage and DC to DC converter and some of those components. So that whole team is working together to deliver these vehicles.
And how many trucks are we talking about in this trial?
We're just talking about 2 trucks for this trial. The intent of the trial is to validate that the trucks meet the mission profile of the operators. So it's not a project that's we've designed to demonstrate the let's say the fueling infrastructure, or to provide a large scale deployment. It's a pilot we're putting together to basically verify that it can be done and that this truck meets performance spec. And then we're going to talk about what we're calling AZETEC 2, which will be a larger scale deployment, which will involve low carbon intensity hydrogen production and delivery. We'll cover some other components that we need to focus on.
Yeah, and where do you see, based on what you're seeing, where do you see this zero emission trucking go from there?
Well, what I'd like to see, I'd like to see AZETEC be successful. I'd like to move into a phase 2 that includes hydrogen derived through natural gas with carbon capture and utilization or sequestration, and that hydrogen to be delivered in either liquid form or by pipeline at a low cost, to 1 to 3 major fueling dispensing locations. Hopefully those would be in a retail environment, so nothing kind of behind the fence in terms of a science project, but a real sort of retail location, and a significant number of trucks, enough trucks to make the business case work for the folks that are providing the fueling infrastructure, because there's investment there to be had. What they need is load. They need guaranteed offtake for their fuel. So that's, to my mind, that's what government can really help with, is if you can help get the load on the numbers of trucks on the road, you can get investment from the energy companies to supply the fuel. So that's the big vision in Alberta, and
Yes.
I think there's a few people that are talking about that with the Transition Accelerator and others, and yeah, we're project developers, so that's what we do. We want to help with that.
It's amazing. And yeah, it's quite a rich ecosystem in Alberta, the amount of groups and organizations that are actually working toward this idea of transitioning and finding an alternative for an industry.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think Alberta is a province that sells transportation fuel. Hydrogen allows you to sell a low carbon intensity transportation fuel. It also allows you to move a few notches up the value chain, and instead of selling sort of the raw fuel, you're selling a finished fuel cell ready fuel, and so it makes a lot of sense for Alberta. You can see why so many people are interested. It might be the only thing that Alberta and that Edmonton and Ottawa kind of agree on, is that there's a great opportunity for Alberta to transition to hydrogen and keep those good jobs and keep industry busy.
Yeah. And in what you're seeing, how long do you see that transition to take, or how long before this technology really starts going out and spreading like wildfire across the prairies?
Yeah, well, that's the billion-dollar question you're asking. Having worked intimately in the fuel cell sector, and understanding sort of what the state of the technology is, it's ready to go. The fuel cells are there. I think the battery technology is there. The integration is getting there, but that's not rocket science. That just takes a little bit of time and energy. And then on the infrastructure, I think you've got the know-how to do steam methane reforming to produce hydrogen from natural gas, and you have the know-how already to capture the carbon. So you're not there, there's no gaping technological gap you're trying to address. It's a matter of will and policy and investment, and how people price carbon. But that, to me, that those are the challenges. It's not a technical challenge so much as it's an economic and a policy question at this point. So that's kind of a Weasley way of avoiding your question, but it's going to go as fast as government and the private sector's will allows it to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's the key. I really hear there's a nowness in the availability of it, and it's how fast do we move towards it or start working to actually make it happen. And it's really interesting. You had a big part into this very recent report on the government strategy and how to move forward in this whole industry.
Yeah, we did. December 16th, the national strategy was released by NRCan. So Ministers O'Regan and Wilkinson released that and announced it. So it was a big lift for us in 2020, getting that strategy written and delivered. There's some big components there. We see hydrogen making up 30% of the energy in Canada by 2050. 350,000 jobs by that time, a $50 billion domestic market, and a real key component in achieving net zero. That's obviously part of the federal government's sort of narrative in terms of climate initiatives, and we can see hydrogen being a major component. And I think in our study we talked about hydrogen being responsible for displacing 190 megatons of CO2 of the 730 megatons required to meet net zero targets. So it was definitely a big piece, and we're happy it's released, and the reception seems to be pretty good so far. And now it's about executing the plan and getting projects like AZETEC deployed successfully and then scaled. We do have to get into a larger scale now to make these things more impactful.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how that project rolls out and the results, and it'll probably make a big difference for business to see what that economic imperative is and what the opportunity is to actually jump over into new technology like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned. We'll have more to share in AZETEC as the trucks are deployed and rubber hits the road.
Awesome. And then what's next for you and your company?
Well, our company, we sort of have 4 pillars. We do the strategy work, we develop projects, we manage those projects, and then we actually do fleet transition planning for agencies, like, for example, transit agencies that are moving over to an entirely zero-emission fleet. And in that case, we do a lot of work with both battery electric and fuel cell technology. So we're going to kind of keep working in those 4 key verticals, and one of the recommendations in the strategy was to develop regional plans and or regional blueprints, and that some of that work has been done in BC, in Alberta, in Quebec, in the Maritimes, and from those regional blueprints, we see hydrogen hubs developing around low carbon intensity sources of fuel, and I'm hopeful that Zen will be part of the structure of these hubs and help them form teams and find partners and put projects together. And I think that's that's going to be a big focus of our company in the coming years.
Yeah, sounds like there'll be a lot to keep you busy, is what I hear.
Yes, if January is any indication of what the year's going to be like, it'll be a busy one for sure.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for being our guest, and really acknowledge you for the amount of vision you've been bringing to this, and you're really being a big part on how this country is going to actually achieve a lot of those goals. So just amazing to see what you've been able to accomplish, and I hear what you're willing and ready to take on in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about what we love doing. So yeah, look forward to speaking more in the future.
Yes, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the showcase on the 27th.
Sounds good.
Thank you. To hear more about our podcasts, showcase events, or the Futureproof Network, please visit us at www.futureproof-network.com.